Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Jamf After Dark podcast, a podcast to introduce you to the excellent people of Jamf and keep you up to date with what is new and exciting with managing Apple devices. Today, we're going to celebrate the end of Accessibility Awareness Month by talking about Jamf's employee resource groups. I'm your co-host, Kat Garbus, joined with co-host Katie English and our guests, Director of Global Revenue Enablement, Aaron Ogren, and Senior Copywriter, Hadar Copley-Woods.
Hello, Jamf After Dark listeners. So glad to have you with us. And Aaron and Hadar, welcome. And it's awesome to be chatting with you today.
Hey, thanks. Happy to be here.
You're both here because you're leaders in Jamf's employee resource groups, or ERGs. We're probably going to abbreviate that more often than not today. Can you tell us a little bit about these groups and what they focus on and how they got started?
Sure. I'd love to touch on that one first. So ERGs at Jamf have been around for several years. I can remember back in 2018, 2019, actually leaving the Women in Tech panel at JNUC in 2018, being blown away by so many women being on stage talking about their experiences, being vulnerable, sharing their stories about diversity in the workplace. And I thought, why don't we have that for our employees? And that's something that I want to be a part of. And around that time is when the groups really started to take place. And we saw several ERGs stand up. Some had been around before that, like our Proud at Jamf group, but we saw Women at Jamf, Shades of Jamf, Families of Jamf, in the ERG that Hadar and I both are active in is Accessibility at Jamf. I actually had to look back at the page that we created when we first stood up the ERG, and I can safely say it was May 2019 because I consider that the Jamf stamp on something of when it was started. So Accessibility at Jamf specifically, we started around mid-year 2019 with a small group and have been growing since then.
I see all of these amazing invitations on my calendar from the Jamf ERGs. We've got group activities, guest speakers, panels. What kinds of things are you working on with your fellow volunteers to get your coworkers involved?
Yeah, great question. So because these ERGs focus so much on space and community and for people to come together and support each other, there's so much intersectionality across the ERGs, which drives a lot of involvement and collaboration and support that we provide each other on not only creating awareness and community, but events that we put out there for our employees to both help build that community and awareness. So we've had a lot of really exciting events over the years, and specifically for Accessibility at Jamf, there's been some that we worked on, like May Mental Health Awareness Month is an exciting one where we work across the ERGs on what types of events and speakers that we can do for all of our global employees related to mental health awareness. So one of my favorite events was we brought in a speaker, Frank Anderson, to talk about mental health awareness. And then we also had silent disco dance party, which was another, not a big event, didn't cost anyone any money, but a couple of employees across the Shades at Jamf group, as well as Accessibility, came together and coordinated a Zoom virtual lunch hour silent dance party that was DJ'd by one of our employees that does a fantastic job with those type of events. So those are the kind of things that we see specifically where we work across and collaborate across the ERGs on some really impactful and special topics.
I was going to ask Hadar, what's also your favorite event? Aaron mentioned hers. I'm curious what your favorite might be.
I refuse to pick favorites. Don't make me do that. But one of the things that got an enormous amount of response was that we were offering some coaching sessions for people with ADD or other types of neurological conditions or disabilities or differences in helping them with their work life. And we got an enormous response and been talking about and hoping that we might be able to offer that up again, just really specific and direct help. And I also have to say that we had a recent speaker talking about intersectionality, like Aaron was talking about, and specifically talking about disableism, which I think a lot of people don't really think about as one of the isms. And I thought she was a terrific speaker who did a great job of explaining that kind of putting it into a social justice context for people to understand. And we also get a lot of individual people with disabilities who work at Jamf contacting us to have us help them figure out how to ask for accommodations or just how to sort of understand what we have available. And we're not HR, but sometimes we are a good jumping off point. And I feel like we've done a lot of that kind of advocacy. And I know Shades has too. I'm sure other groups have as well. Just helping people to understand what we have and even just listening to them with their experiences, I think is really impactful.
I love the spectrum here. On the one hand, we have a disco party. On the other hand, we have helping individuals succeed professionally. And I think that's great. Honestly, I was like, oh, the disco party was great. But actually helping people advocate for themselves and seek accommodation when required, and maybe navigating some legal and compliance challenges there, that's awesome. That I love the mix there. And so you've referenced Shades of Jamf. Of course, Shades is representing our BIPOC Jamf employee groups. And let's see, families. So who is welcome at the families at Jamf ERG? Basically everybody, right?
I can take that one because I'm actually the official liaison between accessibility and the family ERG. They have very specifically a very open view of what family is. So, of course, a lot of the people are parents with kids, but they also want people to think of family as folks who are taking care of parents, single people who are still part of a family that they need to support and be part of. There's a lot of intersection between all of these groups. For instance, racial minorities in the US are impacted disproportionately when it comes to disabilities. And families often has a lot of talk about dealing with schools and kids who have disabilities and have IEPs, which is an individual education plan and things like that. So there are a lot of ways that we all intersect that directly impact people's lives. The families of Jamf, I know, have done really fun things like cookie decorating parties and things like that. And they're also working on some workshops upcoming on just parenting issues. So, which is a little bit more on the serious side.
I have another addition to what Hadar is talking about right now with the families at Jamf and intersectionality there. Another favorite event just popped in my head, and something that was really valuable conversation and impactful conversation in several of our ERG meetings, as we have several employees at Jamf that participate in the accessibility at Jamf ERG and attend our meetings that have children with autism or on the autism spectrum. And I don't identify or have a child with autism, but listening and learning from those other parents in their experiences. And part of that community that the ERG brings that's so special is for people to be able to talk about what's going on in their life and bringing their whole selves to work. And some of the stories that came out of the ERG meetings where those parents were just sharing with each other naturally their experience that they're having with their children and how they support their children was really amazing to experience. And so during Autism Awareness Month, we coordinated a Jamf parent panel where we gave those parents an opportunity to discuss and share their stories for other Jamfs to hear, because part of the reason that makes that really special, and particularly with accessibility, is normalizing things so that people feel comfortable bringing that part of themselves or that part of their life and family to Jamf, and knowing that they have a support system and that they have others to talk to. That is really amazing and special. So wanted to call that out as well.
ERGs are really important for employees to feel valued and heard. That's kind of like if you just Google what is an ERG, why do people care? It's because employees want to feel like their employers are listening. But ERGs can also be really actually valuable on the other side as an employer to uncover untapped leadership and mentorship potential within the organization. And I would argue that both of you, Erin and Hadar, are both leaders and mentors at this point. And you've kind of touched on some of these things already, work that you've already done. But how have you seen your coworkers respond and grow based on the work you've done with your ERGs?
Yeah, I have two examples that I can speak to on this. So I think in terms of involvement with the accessibility ERG so far for myself, I'm someone who participates as an ally. I don't identify personally as having a disability. I do have members of my family that do, but I really got involved initially actively in this to be a better human and understand others in my Jamf community. And secondly, B, do a better job myself to make sure the work that I am doing in enablement is accessible for employees and our partners and the people that I serve. And I've learned so much over the past several years being involved in this ERG because I'm just so interested and passionate about it that I've been able to take back personally to my job to do better and encourage my team to do better and encourage others across the organization to think differently of how they're doing things and maybe bring some things to light that were not a priority that we want to be thinking more about. So I think that's a really impactful leadership mentorship piece of not just for myself, but others, encouraging others in the organization to be better in how we approach doing our jobs and thinking about things from an accessibility perspective. Another, I think, specific to mentorship in our ERGs at Jamf, I'll give a shout out to the women at Jamf ERG that has an amazing mentorship program that they've been running over the past several years. And I've been really lucky to participate in that, both as a mentor and a mentee, and have seen so much incredible value for all the women at Jamf that participate that, and even in some of the male allies that also have participated as mentors has been really valuable. And I could even say I get more out of it as a mentor from the people that I'm providing mentorship with. And I've had a group that I've stuck with for the last several years and really been able to see all of them grow in their careers and grow and build their relationships as well. So that's another really special mentorship opportunity that we have for our employees at Jamf.
I think that the way that I see mentorship and leadership potential and things like that, I think that one of the co-founders of accessibility is such a great example, Kelly Offerman. First of all, I've learned so much from her as far as the language that a lot of people with various learning, she describes her dyslexia as a learning difference, not a learning disability, which is something that made me think she and I have different approaches to our relationship to the word disability. But I'm thinking specifically of how she has worked sometimes on her own, sometimes with Salty, who is just such an asset to Jamf, and others doing really leading discussions on, and this does tie into software, leading discussions on the accessibility features that Apple offers and how it helps her and other people, not only with disabilities and differences, but also just in their work in general. And I think that the way she has been speaking out about it and running like a JNUC session and other kinds of things, it's given Jamf a chance to see that she is a wonderful speaker and she really knows her stuff. And I've really enjoyed seeing her kind of blossom as a little bit of a star, I think. I think I can say that at Jamf. And for me also, I think that if I am considered a leader, which makes me uncomfortable for reasons I cannot currently articulate, but I think that it's in sharing who I am and possibly making other people at least see that there's someone who has experienced what they experience, who might be safe to approach. I don't mean to brag, but I'm mentally ill and have physical disabilities and learning disabilities. So I'm kind of fully outfitted in that area. almost. But I know that speaking out about my own experience, and also as a parent with mental illness, people have felt like they could approach me and who don't even know me at all. And we've chatted, and I've talked to them and listened to them about their experiences. And I think that really fosters not solidarity between people at Jamf, but also more of a connection to Jamf as an organization, knowing that there's someone who's been working here for a while and has continued to work here, who took some disability time off to go into mental health treatment and is still part of Jamf and has not been censored or anything. So I think that in that way, I have seen a lot of individuals who aren't even necessarily directly connected to our ERGs really blossom and grow. I also have to say that I have seen quite a few people who have been involved in shades who have gone on to management positions. And I really do think that some of their involvement and their speaking skills and things like that through the ERG has probably helped them a lot and helped Jamf a lot in recognizing who are excellent leaders at Jamf.
From a purely selfish perspective, from product, I wildly appreciate people like the Accessibility ERG contributing and offering testing, but also just opinions about design and ensuring that our products are as accessible as possible, because accessible design is good design. And we want people to be able to succeed with our products. So just even having an internal resource that can help us with that, I find it amazing.
I'm going to change gears a little bit, kind of stemming from everyone blossoming, some of the amazing things we've talked about. What kind of support have you received from Jamf leadership, and how do you see yourselves continuing to collaborate, looking to the future as ERGs continue to grow and develop?
I think that we are definitely experiencing a little bit of growing pains as an organization, just because we are literally growing so fast and people have a lot to do. I do believe that we have some opportunities to grow more in the leadership areas with ERGs kind of in general. I will say that hiring Denisha has been incredibly encouraging to people all across the ERGs. She has met with several of us, and I'm really encouraged and excited about how leadership will be able to continue the support that they have been doing, but really expand on it as well.
Yeah, I'll add to that I would say, reflecting on the past, we've definitely had a lot of opportunities to engage with leadership where they have been open to listening and learning from our ERG to identify how they can help and facilitate change at Jamf. Like most companies, and I'm going to guess probably all companies, there's definitely areas for improvement. And one of Jamf's, values is relentless self-improvement. So there's a lot of opportunity for all of us to work together of how do we build on the things that we've done over the last several years and continue to improve and not settle for okay, to always strive for greatness. And that's definitely something that I'm seeing as part of a bright future. And like Hadar said, with the addition of the new DE&I leadership and helping to support the ERGs and driving that forward is really exciting. And I'm looking forward to that.
For those who are listening to our podcast that are not familiar with some of these recent hires, Denisha, who was referenced earlier, she's our new VP of Diversity, Talent, and Engagement. And then we also recently hired Michelle Beccaria for being our new Chief People Officer. So I hear you both. I think there's a lot of change that's happened, seeing the ERGs just expanding from more than I think 3 to the several that we've got, having leadership power behind it, these recent hires. My hope is as we continue to make investments as an organization, we'll continue to see continued improvement. And like you said, Aaron, relentless self-improvement. So building off of that, let's pretend, I'm an organization and we don't have yet any employee resource groups, but we see the value of them here. What are some first steps or advice to someone listening in right now that would hope for those things?
So what I would recommend is find some friends in your organization and start talking and thinking about the type of group that you are looking to coordinate. And then the next steps, I would really say, depends on the size of the organization and the culture and the inclusion community that already exists in maturity in that area would depend on the next step. So I would say the Jamf of 5 years ago, which was a little bit more grassroots and we didn't have a lot of process in place, was figuring it out together and putting some things in place and doing the best that we could, and then looking to leadership to say, how does this look? How does this sound? And then just maturing over the years along with the organization. Some other organizations that might be bigger might already have some of those structures in place and may have a formal proposal process for setting up a new ERG. So it really depends. So I would say, number one, best practice, check with your HR team would be the first step. And then work with your friends and then consult your favorite search engine and check out what other companies are doing. I Google things all the time, and especially in terms of ERGs and best practices. And I love to nerd out and read about and attend webinars and workshops about what other organizations are doing to get ideas and learn from what's working and what's not working at other places and try to bring that back to make Jamf a better place.
So if I'm a leader in an organization where an employee resource group is starting to take shape, how could I support that?
I think that one way you can really help ERGs to get off the ground is to, first of all, offer budgets. And I personally think that Jamf has been quite supportive on the budget side of things, at least for accessibility, and also to offer a listening ear. I think that as a leader in any organization, it's really important to understand that the demographics of the United States, at least, are changing, but I think that they're changing all over the world as populations move around. And very soon, we are going to be needing to market to groups of people that a lot of, at least American companies, haven't really thought much about. And if you are in current leadership at a company, I'm guessing there's a pretty good chance that you have an idea of who your customer base is and how to, forgive me, I'm in marketing, but how to market to them, but also, how to support them in your product. And I think that there is a lot to learn from ERGs on understanding changing populations and understanding who you're going to be serving in the future with your products and with your communications, and having more diversity in your company. I mean, there are so many articles out about that, about how it strengthens a company, not only to have representatives from a bunch of different groups, but also to have the type of thinking that come from different kinds of groups. Queer people have thought a lot more probably about family organization than others have. And we've also done a lot of organizing and things like that maybe straight populations haven't really thought through as much. And I think that being able to rethink the basic structure of a family means that you have really learned how to do that out of the box thinking. That's really a benefit to so many companies. And I think also that disabled people have a certain amount of an outsider's look onto things, and also of how to adapt that can be really valuable. Just thinking about the two groups that I fit easily into. And so I would try to see ERGs as not only a way for employees to get involved and to support each other, but also as a way to make the company stronger and to learn. I just think selfishly, I would think of it as an investment in the economic future of my company and act accordingly.
I love it. We've kind of covered this, but in case there's anything else you want to add here, can you talk to us about what accessibility means and why it's so important to Jamf, or why it's so important to you at Jamf?
Sure. So the thing about accessibility, and as many of the other ERGs that we have, is that it can mean different things to different people, and it should, to be inclusive. Being a part of this group has taught me so much about accessibility and opened my eyes to think differently about it than I had ever in the past. Most known things when people think about accessibility are physical spaces, interpreters, and closed captioning for friends with hearing impairment, being mindful of contrast, colors, fonts when we're looking at content and design, accessibility in our products for our customers. But there's other things too that I think about in accessibility, and what I've learned over the years is clarifying camera inclusion on a Zoom meeting for a training session is something that impacts me, so that if someone with an accessibility need, or perhaps even with anxiety of being on camera and participating in a meeting, has that heads up to be able to prepare and understand, what they're expecting. Another thing that actually just I thought of today when I was looking at Slack, and in our local Minneapolis office channel, our amazing office manager, who is active in our ERG as well, posted that we have a fire drill coming up next week and gave a heads up that there will be flashing lights and loud noise, and you will be expected to walk down 11 flights of stairs to exit the building. And it was the details that were provided in that message to give employees that utilize the office space for work and an opportunity to know that was coming, is something that I hadn't seen in the past. And it's those small things that are really, really important and really impactful. Creating awareness and providing a space for people to learn, and also to know that there isn't an ERG out here where there's others that you can join for community, and to lean on, and to Hadar's examples before, to know that you have someone to talk to, is really important. So those are all things that I think about in terms of accessibility as we create more awareness around it.
I think I want to answer your question by focusing on one accessibility feature that most of us are aware of, although a lot of people don't know what they're called. Back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of disabled people were advocating for being able to move around cities more. So they were doing a lot of advocacy on making buses all have a way for people in wheelchairs to get onto them, and other things like that. And one of the things that we have in almost every city I have been to, at least in the US, but we have curb cuts. And I'll just explain what curb cuts are, because I've had people not get what I mean. But basically, it means that at every corner of every street in most cities and towns, there is a little cut in the curb that is a mini ramp, so that you don't have to step down from the curb and you can get a wheelchair down. Everyone uses those now. Everybody uses them. People with strollers, people who are just, I really don't think that we would have been able to actually create suitcases with wheels and have them be so ubiquitous if we didn't already have curb cuts almost everywhere. Delivery people, that kind of thing. It's just everybody uses them and they're useful for everyone. And for me, I think that is why everyone should care about accessibility, because ideas that we have for making things accessible for people with disabilities always helps everybody. And I'm just thinking on my own about when we got a very active and outspoken employee who is deaf. First of all, he helped everyone to know that we actually already had a way that we could ask for ASL at meetings, which I hadn't thought of before. But he also really helped us to create a culture in which we ask to have the closed captioning to show. And I discovered myself that I was able to follow meetings better and to retain better when I turned on closed captioning. And I don't think I would have realized that if we hadn't had that kind of advocacy. So I think that's why we all should care about accessibility, just selfishly, to be honest.
Accessible design is good design. And this is me nerding out. Audio quality on meetings is accessible inherently. it enables some of those tools, those auto captioning tools. It reduces fatigue for remote audiences. I'm all about it.
So to wrap up, we are still riding the high from the Jamf Nation user conference, lovingly known as JNUC. There was, of course, a wonderful panel for women in tech. We're all women here. Can you all talk about how you found support and inspiration from your colleagues along the way?
So I feel I'm not as involved in that ERG as I am in others because it already has so many people involved, and I try to focus on ones that are smaller, like accessibility. But I have to say that being surrounded by all of these women who are also very outspoken and passionate and working hard makes me feel a lot less like a sore thumb sticking out, and makes me feel just more comfortable to do my job. And proud to be a woman. I said it especially when I see women in tech who, certainly people my age, women have been highly discouraged from going into tech. Even though I work on the creative side, I find it really inspirational to see women programmers and leaders in other ways.
Erin, how about you?
I find a lot of inspiration, not only from some really amazing leaders that we have here at Jamf that are doing really great things and are very involved in supporting our ERGs and speaking out in different forums to share their experience. But also, this podcast is a good example of, like, we're here with 4 badass women that are doing really great stuff and have amazing careers and bring a lot of greatness to Jamf. And so it's the big and the small things that inspire me and get me excited about women in tech.
Erin and Hadar, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. If you'd like to send us fan mail and tell us about the time you led an employee resource group demanding better coffee in the break room, drop us a note at podcast@jamf.com. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time.